Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting of the Ordinance Committee to order, this being November 12th at 6:35. I have with me Counselor Murphy, I'm Counselor Vacon, Counselor Bartley, and Counselor Lisi. Counselor Anderson Burgos is away on vacation, and our attorney, Crystal Barnes, is engaged in a city matter, but she is available by text should something come up and we may need her advice.
I'll make a motion to take number 1 off the table.
All in favor? Item 1 is minutes of the previous meetings. We have minutes from 9:12 and 10:08 that were distributed to the committee prior to tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I'll make a motion to take number 2 off the, this is public hearing, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll make a motion to take.
Yes, as for a special
Yes,
permit, I believe
I'll make
it
a
is.
motion to take number 2 off the table and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, item 2 is a special permit application submitted by United Tractor Trailer School, Inc. for the use of a temporary storage unit pursuant to section 7.2.12 of the zoning ordinance at 50 Holyoke Street, Red Lot Extension, map 176, block 00, parcel 014. So I see the applicant before us.
These
And
guys,
just-
these guys look familiar.
They do look familiar, but just to be precise, if you could give your name and address.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name's
The button on the top. There.
There you go. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name's Martin Dunn. I'm an attorney practicing in Holyoke, 480 Hamden Street, representing United Tractor Trailer Company. I'm accompanied this evening by Nick Wannett, who's director of the company. It's a family-owned business in Holyoke.
So if you want to just run down the,
If I might, and I'll try to be brief because it wasn't too long ago that we were here before you asking for a special permit for a temporary storage facility to be located on the premises leased by United Tractor Trailer from the Holyoke Mall. It's a storage facility that would be used for various items such as, if I might, such as paperwork, supplies, cones, and a refrigerator. What happened was we were before this body approximately a year ago, and we were requesting that the area that they were leasing be allowed to have located within it a temporary storage facility. Since that time, that was the white lot, as they call it, which is owned by the Holyoke Mall. Since that time, the Holyoke Mall sold the white lot, I believe, to Borowski Real Estate, and therefore United Tractor Trailer then entered into a lease with the Holyoke Mall for utilization of the red lot, which is further around across from the old Sears, for the operation of their tractor trailer business. I think if you look at the diagram that we submitted, that the location of the temporary tractor trailer, which you have the authority pursuant to the Holyoke ordinances as listed on the application to grant for longer than 6 months, would be even less intrusive and less visible in the location that's being placed where it was placed on the white lot. I have a picture of that. Nick, if you could just hold that. I have a schematic.
if you could, yeah, I don't see it here. But while you're finding it, I have been by there, and to me, it does seem less, yeah, it's less visible in the current location than it was in the original one. It used to be right as you were going in. Now it's more around the back.
Yeah, so they've entered into a new 5-year lease on the red lot with the Holyoke Mall. And as stated, and as I think you observed, the storage facility is even less visible on the red lot than where it was on the white lot. I know we went, and I'll just touch briefly upon it. United Tractor Trailer is a locally owned company. They train individuals for tractor trailer licenses, commercial driver licenses for construction, driving, UPS, Class B and Class A licenses can be obtained there. They're even hoping, and they've had some business coming from Amazon now for people getting trained with licenses from that facility. They're the only bilingual tractor trailer training facility in the region. They're also now working, since the last time I was before you, they're working with an organization called Access to Recovery for people coming out of recovery to access employment. They have 25 employees. They get approximately 500 students per year. I think, as I represented previously to this committee, that they're employing people, they're training people. It's a tremendous career opportunity that I think they afford people across the board in the city of Holyoke and the region. And I would respectfully request that they be allowed to use this temporary storage facility on the red lot as they were authorized to do on the white lot.
Thank you.
I don't want to go through the whole background because we did it before, but if you have any questions, we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
Right. And I just have a general question about
Sure.
the school itself and the trucks traveling on the roads when the students are learning. If you track this, and I'm not raising it as a complaint, just as a question, are you aware of any accidents that have occurred during the trainings at all, or has it been pretty calm?
It's been very good.
Okay. Oh, okay. Because interested neighbors, are always wondering what happens in the neighborhood and on the I-91 near us, so. Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Counselor Murphy?
Yeah, just two things. The storage facility in relation to the Providence Place Mother House, is that far away, or?
There's
Trying to get in.
yeah, it's on the that I just handed in that schematic. As you'll see, there's a great deal of coverage as to where it's located and the mother house. There's quite a. It seems like it's a wooded area.
Is that the mother house or is that the mall?
That's the mother house there on the right.
Okay, and then storage is going to be over here.
Yeah, if I could just come
Little
in.
building, right? The little rectangle.
The little
Oh,
square.
right there,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
There, yeah,
And
there's
it's
a-
behind all trees?
It's behind all the trees in the wooded area, yes.
Okay. And no trucks are going there? That's just your storage facility, okay. No, I'm fine. I mean, I just wanted to make sure that you weren't going to have the tractor trailers right by you and they're trying to have a quality of life and the trucks are constantly going in and out, so thank you.
The storage facility is 40 by 10 feet, and it's also not, there's a wooded area which separates from the mother house, but also it's not up against the property line going further down towards West Springfield. It's more on the property, so it doesn't border anybody. It doesn't come close to anybody in the back end either. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. So where are you keeping the tractor trailers now? Because I think at some point we were seeing the trailers on that white lot, but
It's further back.
so the same red lot that and so the trailers themselves can like make their way around the rotary for the mall?
They usually skip right up by the stone.
Oh, okay, I got it, thanks. All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody
It's in a public hearing, so.
Second.
ready to make a motion?
Well, you got a public hearing, so you might want to.
Any members of the public wishing to weigh in on this special permit?
I think it should be allowed.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's another discussion. Madam Chair, do we have the
Conditions.
conditions from the prior permit? We have a copy of the prior permit? Or Marty, do you?
I don't think I have the proper permit, but I think it was that if I recall, it was the United Tractor Trailer keep the property in an upstanding condition. That was the condition, as I recall.
And they only operate during the daytime, correct?
That part of the daytime, hope they do.
I don't
Did we
know.
put hours on the conditions?
I don't believe there was no hours on it, no.
I think it was more about the aesthetics relative
It was the
to
aesthetics, yes.
storage,
I think
and
we had-
what the building would be,
yeah, I think
what
we
it
had-
would be made of, is my recollection. But I do not have it exactly in front of me, what was approved. We could probably look it up on,
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that I believe that's a taxable entity, the temporary structure being placed. Isn't that taxable, Marty?
Is it, sure, I would
believe-
imagine,
I believe
yeah.
that- I think that was our primary discussion.
Yeah, that
last
they
time,
would,
and
they
we-
would do
we
an
got-
assessment on the personal property, yes.
Yeah, so we got clarification from the assessor on that, so,
Right.
I don't think there are really any other significant conditions, but I was
We
gonna
should
say,
just say carry them forward.
exactly, so I agree with Councilor Lisi, so I'll make a motion that we just continue with the current conditions. It's a new special permit, and then we I'll make a motion to approve the special permit with the current conditions still attached.
all in favor? So the motion is to approve the special permit with the original conditions attached. All in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
Then it will go to city council at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very,
A week from tonight.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Make a motion to take number 3 off the table. We already closed the public hearing, so I'll just make a motion to take number 3 off the table.
Correct. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 3, zone change application submitted by Albert Babadzanov for a property on 40 Lyman Street and adjacent lot 038020002.1 and 001.1 from current zone DR to proposed zone IG. So I did ask Ryan, because I had not seen a letter recommending for or against the zone change, and he was able to communicate with planning and get the copy for tonight. And you each have a copy of this letter in front of you. And so I will read this letter into the record. It's dated October 21st, but we did receive it today. And it says, Counselor Vacon, please be advised that at its October 15th meeting, the Holyoke Planning Board discussed the above referenced zone change request. After consideration of all information and testimony presented during the public hearing, the board voted 4-0 to recommend the Ordinance Committee of the City Council that the zoning map change request be approved. Under ordinary circumstances, the board would be forced to recommend against this zone change on the grounds that it would create a spot zone. But this application is to allow for a proposed use falling squarely within the range of uses that would be permitted as of right in the existing downtown residential zone, were it not for the unusual restrictions imposed by our marijuana ordinance. Testimony from the neighborhood indicated overwhelming support, and strong evidence was presented that the proposed zone change would allow the rehabilitation of an empty blighted parcel into a productive use. Said use would be consistent in scope and character with other uses similarly found within the DR zone, and should not raise any of the issues underlying the general rule against spot zoning. Therefore, the board was reluctant to recommend denial of the zone change. Additionally, the board recognizes that there is a risk in zoning a parcel under the assumption that the property will be used for a particular use, in this case, a marijuana facility. Nevertheless, we zone for uses rather than for projects. If the proposed business dissolves, the zone change to the parcel remains and will allow other uses that may not be consistent to the surrounding DR zone. From a planning perspective, the better solution would be to amend the marijuana ordinance to broaden the zoning districts in which marijuana facilities are allowable. Were it not for the current requirement that such facilities be placed in general industry, IG districts only, this zone change request would be unnecessary, since retail services generally are allowed in DR districts as of right. The board further recommends that the city council take this opportunity to amend the marijuana ordinance to allow marijuana facilities in suitable zones beyond IG so that this situation does not reoccur. If you have any questions regarding this decision, please feel free to contact me. Very truly yours, Eileen Regan, Chairman, Holyoke Planning Board. I will say that this is the first time I've ever heard the planning board recommend a spot zone, but there's a first for everything. Counselor Murphy.
Yeah, a few comments. First of all, and when I first heard the proposal, it looked like the entire neighborhood was in favor, and I think their direct neighbors, direct abutters to that property were, I've heard from a couple people on Center Street that brought up some other issues. Number one, that there's a school at 30 Center Street. And I've tried to find out a little bit more about if it's a K-12 school, and I've been unable to, I've asked one Holyoke if they could give me a hand trying to figure that out. So that would be an issue if in fact it is something along the lines of a K-12, because I believe it's within 150 feet of that property. So that would be an issue. The second thing, based on the planning board's recommendation, is a concern that if in fact we do this and they're not allowed to do the marijuana facility, then potentially we've opened up a problem for the property in relation to the neighbors that are supporting it. So those are two concerns I have that I'm not sure we're going to fully address tonight, but they're two concerns that I do have. And you know, I'm still trying to get more information about the school situation, and I'm sure I'm going to hear from some of the residents who brought that to my attention and their concerns. So that's all I have.
Anybody else on the committee? Counselor Lisi?
I just want to reiterate some of the points that Councilor Murphy made. I was definitely surprised by the level of support that we saw for a commercial venture in the middle of a neighborhood and for the zone change, because usually neighbors want to defend against these sorts of encroachments. But I think that in light of the planning board recommendation, what they're saying is that you know, this is a use that would fit in the downtown residential zone if it were any other type of retail business other than marijuana. And so I think that, you know, I would definitely be interested in revisiting the marijuana ordinance because I think there's an amendment to the schools buffer that has come up now. We passed it for one set of limitations, and we thought it could be more broadly applied, but as the maker of the order, Councilor Murphy was recommending against that sort of movement at that point in time. And now, you know, I think from the beginning, if we think of, you know, marijuana and cannabis products as, you know, legal products now, they shouldn't really be considered differently than any other like pharmaceutical or CVS sort of company coming into a neighborhood. So I think we are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here in terms of, you know, the way to defend the neighborhood against other encroachments that could come in under the IG, the general industry zone, as opposed to the downtown residential zone. But I did see an overwhelming amount of neighborhood support for the issue, and so I'm inclined to vote in favor of the recommendation tonight.
So I just have a question for Counselor Murphy. Relative to the school, what concern was raised to you about that? And what was the description of the school as we understand it?
It's the Neary School, right?
Well, it's called LEAP. All capital letters is what I've gotten, and like I said, I've tried to, I haven't had a chance to go into the school itself to ask, but I know it's right next to One Holyoke, and they're aware of it, and they were going to check and see what it actually does, and I'm not exactly sure what it does. I believe it does provide education, and I think it is for a K-12, but not necessarily a full scope. but I don't know. That's one of the things I'm trying to find out.
Okay, so my concern is that we need to understand what the school is. It just somehow didn't come out in the public hearing, but we can't just simply ignore the ordinance because we may disagree with it, because we purposely amended it to allow a certain use, but not the retail, and that was not done by accident. It was a conscious decision. So we can't really just set the ordinance aside. So the question that we have to get the answer to is if the school meets the definition of a school as per the ordinance. Because that would be the limiting factor, not the zoning at this point. So I really think we need a motion to table till we can get that answer, and then we can revisit it once we know whether it meets that
Yeah, I mean, I would,
definition.
yeah, I would agree with that on the basis that,
We
you know,
need
if
some
we were to
guidance.
approve the zone change, and in fact it
That
is
guidance.
not eligible
Right.
to
it
be
would
operated, then
pointless.
we're going contrary to what the recommendation from the planning board is suggesting, that, you know, if in fact it wasn't gonna be a marijuana facility, then it could create other problems. So I think we gotta get all the facts on the table, and I'm sorry I couldn't get more information on it. It's not my ward, but I'm trying to find out.
Right, well-
And I've had people contacting me, so I'll try to get more information on the school and exactly what they do. But it's my understanding that it is a certified school.
School, okay.
Accredited, right?
Yeah.
Just under discussion?
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, just to Chair Council Murphy, how is it your understanding that it's a school, Terry? Based on what?
Based on other neighbors' comments plus one Holyoke's comments.
Okay, but kind of but nothing written or nothing disclosed. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on that. So you're probably getting the same emails that I'm getting. I know there's a resident on Center Street. I did look at, and just so I'm clear, Madam Chair, the ordinance is, the buffer is how far?
Buffer is 500 feet, except that we made an exception and made it smaller
For
for
cultivation.
cultivation only.
200.
For cultivation only, okay.
And this school, if it is a certified school, is within both of those.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm just going to repeat something I've said before, is that we close public hearings, because we're always in a rush to close public hearings, and now we close this public hearing. We already did it, so that's another example of a mistake, which I've recommended against numerous times, but that's all right. I'm only going to make one little side comment to the planning board. If they want to set policy, they can run for office, just like we do, and they can sit here and file an ordinance. I don't really appreciate being lobbied by the planning board, any members. I'm not going to single out a member because it was a vote of the membership, it's not just the chair. But they can come here, they can take out the papers, they can run for office, they can sit in this body, just like we all did, and try to win an election, and then they can come and file an order. And then they can change an ordinance. But to hear two, out of a 5-paragraph, half-baked letter that doesn't go into anything relative, especially to the school, that's their job, Madam Chair. I think that's the planning board's job, is to figure out within this letter, is there a school nearby? Isn't that their job? I'm going to suggest, and that's rhetorical, so the floor. So that's the planning board's job, is to tell us, do their job, figure out what's proximate to this facility, instead of giving us 3 paragraphs of rhetoric about DR zoning and IG zoning. I don't care what they have to say about that. I would care if they were elected and they ran for office and they sat in here, filed an order, but we don't get that from the planning board. We get 3 paragraphs in a 5-paragraph letter saying change the zoning or unusual. I could care less, planning board. So, what I do care about is that you do the measurements, figure out what's in the zone, what can be done and what cannot be done. Instead of this letter, this is what we have. Now, I appreciate your volunteerism, and I've said that numerous times on the microphone, numerous times. I appreciate it, and the city can't run without volunteers. But I'm not going to tolerate this rhetoric, Madam Chair. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. Counselor McGivern?
Thank you, Councilor Bacon. Just a quick thought. It's a shame that the planning board doesn't work, at the same time we do, and we don't get the information or discuss it together, but we know that's a bridge that cannot be crossed, I guess. But one open square takes up 2 city blocks with one address. There's got to be multiple addresses within open square. I'd be curious as to how the assessors look at the occupants, as far as what their correct address is in terms of situations like this. Because I believe the school is nowhere near the facility that we're talking about if you measured it to where the school is in that building.
I don't think that this is open square.
It's 40 Lyman.
This,
It's
It's
further
40
down.
Lyman.
It's further down in the flats.
The former Franco-American Club.
the former Franco-American Club is a school?
No.
No,
That's
the
where
building
that's
that,
where they're trying to change.
it's near the school.
It's 1 block away.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the school in open square.
No,
Then just forget my comments.
thank you. Counselor Lisi.
I'd just like to make one more comment about the process. So I don't believe that it is the planning board's responsibility to figure out what the, regulations and, neighboring, abutting sorts of properties are when they're giving a recommendation on a zone change, except for the adjacent zones, because we typically advise against spot zoning. I think that the process that Councilor Bartley referred to would be more appropriate for our own special permit process, and we're not really talking about the special permit process around permitting marijuana, either cultivation, manufacturing, or retail facility. This is about the zone, and I don't think that the planning board is looking at the, other sorts of things going on in the neighborhood except for the other zones that are at play here. And I think that's why they're making this recommendation, that they're being in some ways forced to advise in favor of a spot zone, which is, again, not an industry best practice by any means. They're usually unfavorable. But here, because the restrictions that we put on where marijuana facilities can be cited are particularly narrow, that it's creating a conflict in the neighborhood, where there might not be a conflict if we would allow them more broadly in the downtown residential district. So, I mean, that's my 2 cents on the process. We have the authority, the permitting authority, and we're the ones that have to look at those sorts of details about where the buffers are and what sort of impact it would have on the neighborhood, and that's why we retained control of the special permit process. And in this case, they're just looking at the underlying zoning.
Okay, so this is not a special permit. This is a zone change hearing that was opened and closed, and now we're entertaining the planning board's recommendations and making a decision. Neither the planning board nor, in my opinion, this committee has the authority or the power to change the law that was voted by the full city council. So to the extent that there is something within the law that does not conform with this request, I would respectfully say that we cannot recommend moving it forward, because we would be consciously violating the ordinance that the city council in whole passed. If we don't like the ordinance, then we need, to take a look at it and perhaps change it. So far, the majority was favorable on the reasons for it and for the area that it was in, and it was actually supported by the people in the marijuana industry at the time that it was created. So I don't think, for the purposes of this, we can throw away the ordinance. So I do think public hearing closed sooner or later, it really doesn't matter. If the school exists and it is there, it's not a matter of information that would not be learned otherwise. It's physically present, and we simply need to know that it's there. I would say that I do see it as the role of our planning staff to know the ordinances and to help inform the board if buffer issues are not met. They do that regularly on zoning matters, special permit hearings. They are knowledgeable relative to buffers within our ordinances. That is within their job. And so it would have been helpful if that had been put forth to us, but the neighbors, and I always say to our constituents to be vigilant and communicate to us. You know your neighborhood better than we do often, and I think this concern was raised by the neighbors, and so we need to get the answer. So I would entertain a motion to table so that we can get the answer and then know legally where we stand relative to this requested zone change.
Second.
Counselor Bartley.
Well, I'll make the motion in a second, but I'd want to have somebody tasked to, who's going to tell us about what the school is, Madam Chair?
I will try to visit it. I'm having some other issues, but I'll try to get there.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that's not Council Murphy's job.
Well,
I'll make a motion that we ask the planning board, which, I mean, they have
The
staff.
planning
The
department.
planning, well, that's what I meant, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. When
I
I
hear
said,
you.
and when I was
I hear you.
railing against them, I didn't mean Mr. Kelly or Mr. Regan or anybody else. No, it's not their job, but they have, that's who I meant, Counselor Lisi, if you weren't clear on that. So, I feel the planning board should do the planning department, if you will, should do its job and advise its board, but in this case, advise us as to whether or not this is in fact a school. And if it is in fact a school, they can come back to us. I mean, it's not Counselor Murphy. I mean, all due respect to Counselor Murphy, I'm sure he could check it, but I think we need our departments to do this. So
Okay,
I'm going
so-
to make so my motion is to have Mr. Allen ask Mr. Burkott to send a communication to us relative to this question about this, whether it's a school and whether, if it is, whether it's proximate to, how far away is it from this facility at 40 Lyman?
Okay.
That's my
I'll
motion.
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this is tabled until we get feedback on the question of the school.
I'll make a motion
Thank
to
you.
table then.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know if now that you've tabled it, just so you'll know, you can check, we did check with that building, and what they informed the architect and the petitioner is that it is not a school, it is a program. They're not a school. Just so you know, we talked to the director. I'm sorry, the architect's not here this evening, but our attorney is, and that was obviously a question that was raised, and they went right to the building and spoke to the director, the architect did, and they were informed that no, they are not a school, they are a program. And that's just so you know, you can check on that yourselves.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you
you.
very much. If that turns out, when would you hear it again, just so we would know if it's,
At our next scheduled meeting, but we haven't exactly charted that out, but it will be within a month at the most.
okay.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you both. All right, take a motion, take number 4 off the table.
So,
Do I have a second? All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Item 4, filed by Counselor McGee, ordered that permanent speed bumps be installed on Bemis Road. And, Mr. Parent, do you want to come in? I think you're the star of the rest of the agenda. Well, wait a minute. No, not number 5, because we do have a person here for a petition.
Well, Madam Chair, do you want to go out of order?
Would you mind?
Madam Chair,
Okay.
motion to suspend the rules and take item number 5 out of order?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 is a street vendor license application from Mr. Charles Theocles for a food cart. I do, come on to the mic, hello. I do have
Got the comedy show again.
the list of your proposed sites.
Yes, okay, that was my first question.
Yes, and I
Hello,
asked.
are you hearing
and
me?
I-
Okay,
And I
good.
asked our administrative assistant to reach out to you so that you would know that it needed to be narrowed,
Okay.
because that's what we were trying to communicate
That's fine, that's fine.
at our first meeting.
If you'll
And-
notice, most of those locations on the list that I gave to you are private locations.
Right, so what we need to know from you are which public locations you are seeking to have your cart in.
That's a very good question.
And that's what we need to understand from you so
Okay,
that we can
I'm not bringing up the
make a
planning board.
decision.
If I may. Mr. Bacon,
I'll tell ya.
Sir Lisi.
thank
Great.
you.
I'm not going to bring up the planning board, but I will
okay.
bring up The DPW, which I paid a fee to be on the streets of Holyoke, in whatever appropriate locations would be deemed appropriate, paid them a fee. The clerk's office, the same thing. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts has issued me a state hawker's license. Now, obviously, I'm going to say this with a little bit of reticence, it's got to be tempered by the local ordinances as to where I can be on the street. So the DPW basically was for keeping the place clean wherever we happen to be operating. The private locations are the private locations. Those are out of the domain of, I think, out of the city.
If I may just add, or add some clarification here. So, for example, you have like the YMCA on Appleton Street. So the YMCA is a private location, right? But
YMCA, that particular location would be on the side street of YMCA, but it's a very bad location because you have school buses and buses picking people up, so.
Sure, so then I could
one
use the HCC example. The point is the sidewalks, the city owns the sidewalks, wherever there are sidewalks.
Right.
So if you want to be,
I'm talking about HCC would be a street location,
okay,
potentially.
and so we own the public rights of way and the streets as well.
That would be on a public way.
Yeah. So what we need to know is which particular locations you'd like to set up your cart, because we have to permit you to be on these public
Okay.
ways.
There are, the majority of this list are private locations on private property. But there might be certain locations within the city limits, for instance, up Route 9, going up towards East Hampton, that is on the side of a road.
Yeah, Mrs. Achilles, we don't have Route 9 in Holyoke, so let me.
Well, Route 5, excuse me.
Okay, so Mrs. Achilles, so let's not get into hypotheticals. Where, if I may?
I don't have one location on City Street.
Well, was that not your task when you were here last time, to give us a location? Was that not your task when you were here last time?
No, it was not.
Hang on,
My
hang on.
task was to give you a list of locations that I felt that I would be able to operate appropriately. Most of these locations that I gave to you are private locations.
Okay,
As far as the city locations go, according to other departments in your city location, here in your city, I am able to go to street locations to be able to operate. Not one single location, according to basically everyone I've spoken to, including the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, tempered by the fact that you have city ordinances that you need to have guidelines with. I understand.
Correct. So, Mr. Theocles, what we need to know from you now
None.
is which,
I have none.
which-
No public street locations. But
Well,
that's
then-
not what I was told.
the only reason you're here is because you need us to allow you to be in public street locations.
Okay,
If there are none that you seek,
Well,
you don't need to be here.
well, that was the question. I thought it might beg itself. However, the point is, there might be locations that I would like to get involved with, but not one location, because why would I be limited to one location if I'm paying a fee to DPW for all of their streets?
Right, so the question we are asking you is which 2 or 3 from this list do you want? Otherwise, we just need to table this and move on.
I think what I need to do, I've given you a list of where I'll probably be, and that's all private locations, okay? And I think tabling it, and when I determine what public locations, because the DPW was concerned about liability insurance and making sure that the area is clean when you
We
finish
get that.
operating there. And I wouldn't, on a public location, I wouldn't be there for that long anyway.
Right.
I would be on a private location much longer than I would be on a public location. Number 2. Number 3, I may determine that there are 2 or 3 or 4 great locations on the street, which I haven't as yet, but I wanted to give you an idea. So do you have to issue me a limited permit for private locations?
No,
You do not?
no.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure then, I guess some of the wires have been crossed interdepartmentally. And this is what I have tried to clarify. Because the state hacker's license is exactly that. The Commonwealth issues a license for someone to operate wherever they can or wherever they want to. Obviously, it's limited to city ordinance of each municipality.
Right. So the only thing you have to get from us is if you had 2 public streets you wish to have your cart on, tell us the addresses, and then we could let you get started. If you just pick 2 of the streets, we could do that.
We're coming into snow, it's okay.
All right, well then, we'll happily table it, and you can,
Mention the planning board ever again.
and you can come back to us when you figure out which streets you want.
Okay, so table that, but just know, or would I be able to get some kind of a document from you stating that all your private locations are fine, or do I need that from you?
You don't need that because
I don't own it.
we only pertain to the public locations.
Joe wants to speak.
Counselor McGivern?
But he does need a special permit from the Board of Health to sell food in the city limits.
Yes, well, I have that.
He has that.
I didn't hear that.
Well,
I have
I have
all
no
of it.
idea what the
I have all
DPW
of
fee
that.
is
Fire
because there is no
department, Board of Health,
DPW
you
fee
name it, I got it.
approved by us.
no.
No, not approved
It
by
has
us.
nothing to do with us.
Well, there shouldn't be a fee if it's not approved by the legislative body. The DPW commission can't create their own fees. No board
I
can.
don't think it's.
We would have created their
It's
fee,
Board
Joe.
of Health.
That's the only way they have a fee. But I thought they had a $100 fee for, did you have a $100 fee, Ms. Sakis?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so. So I think we created it, Joe,
But then
Or
for his
The food vendor
for
license.
this,
yeah, for his license.
this is a location license.
Right.
The Board of Health has their own, that matches the state. And I know this from the day of the parade, when hawkers and vendors come in.
So I have your
have to
blessing
get
for
a
all
permit from
the
city.
private locations.
They have to have the same permit from the city for food. The food's very important because the Board of Health wants to know where he's cleaning the cart at night and where he's storing, the cart, and is it sanitary?
So to your point, Counselor McGivern, he paid a fee of $150 to DPW for a street vendor license.
Which I was told I could go anywhere. So I don't know.
And it's noted various
Probably falls into
locations.
the
Street
same
vendor is not a
planning
food cart,
board.
though. Street vendor is.
No, operating a food cart. Purpose is street vendor. Description is operating a food cart on the document from DPW. And the other document is
Board of Health, no.
Board of Health for $100
Okay,
for mobile food. And the other document is the state license for a hawker license and peddler, which he was talking about earlier.
but the only thing we're saying is if he wants to take up a public parking space for a period of time, he has to tell us what space that is.
Exactly. And
And I'll vote for one if I know when it's gonna be there, but I'm not voting for multiples, not knowing when it's gonna be there.
well, right.
Because
Well, I need 2 parking spaces.
And we have, excuse me, folks,
Hey.
but we have made the applicant aware of the process. This is the second time we're just going over it. So when you pick your streets, we'll be happy to move on it.
Have specific, so just leave this open for the moment.
Okay.
In some envelope somewhere.
Okay, it'll be in the minutes.
We'll figure it out as we sort of grow the issue.
All right, but I would strongly encourage you to pick one so you could have one to start with.
No,
but
it's okay.
It's up to you.
It's okay.
Okay.
I'd just
The
like to,
private
Council Lisi.
locations are really much more conducive to doing business than a lot of the private ones.
so I just want to reiterate once more before you take off that if you're in the parking lot for Kmart Plaza, that would be a private property and you'd need to get permission from the owner to be there. But if you're going to be on the sidewalk or the street next to the Kmart Plaza, that would be the
That would be us.
public way, and then you would need,
Sine qua non, as we say.
That's true. That is true. Very good.
Okay. All right then.
Okay.
It's a
I'll
lawyer term.
entertain
It's
a
exciting.
motion to table.
So moved.
second.
All in favor?
All right.
That'll be
Aye.
in your Funkin' Wagnall dictionary.
Thanks for the comedy show. Look forward to the next round.
No, you didn't forget it. I think it's over the planning board door. Sine qua non.
It's true enough.
Okay, all.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
We'll see you, I'll talk to Ryan, and then I'll give him some input, and then I'll email you,
Okay,
if you wish.
all right.
I'd rather not be emailed by me.
It's fine. I
Well, I
just,
figured you're running the show, so you can disseminate what you might have to disseminate.
pick one or two streets and we'll be able to give you an answer.
We will figure that out as we go along.
Very good.
Madam Chairman?
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just motion to suspend this. I guess, can we take 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15?
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Ms.
You
Dawkins.
also.
You too. 15
As a
off the table
package.
as a package.
Is
So we
there a
just-
second?
Yes.
All in favor? Aye. Now,
Thank you. If the chair would like, I did provide a handout, and if Councilor McGivern would like a copy, I can.
does
bring it.
everybody,
We have it, thanks.
here's, I
Bob,
think you got
Bob,
it.
just give one to Dennis.
Oh, you didn't get one?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your patience.
If I complain about the meeting going late tonight, it's my fault. So I'll try to keep it as quick as I can.
We tried. I gotta thank Councilor Lisi for trying on that one.
Well,
That was not easy.
Okay, first item I have is an item that was, well, actually, I believe the public hearing is closed, and then it was continued from a couple of months ago. And that's the topic of the permanent speed humps on Bemis Road.
Right.
At the last meeting, the committee asked me to look into a couple of different things. They asked me to reach out to public safety, to the police department and fire department, to get their opinions on placing speed humps on Bemis Road. I did that, and they don't have any concerns with placing the speed humps there, providing they're tapered like we normally taper our speed humps. The temporary speed humps that we put in are much more abrupt, and if they were constructed like that, they would be concerned. But if they're constructed like the typical speed hump, they're perfectly fine with them. The other item I was asked to look into was the accident history on Bemis Road, and I reached out to the police department, and they provided the accident reports over the past 5 years. There have been 17 reported accidents on Bemis Road and in the vicinity of Bemis Road. The majority of them have been at the intersection of East Hampton Road and Bemis Road. 9 out of the 17 were on the East Hampton Road end of the street. 2 were on the Northampton Street intersection, and then 6 of them occurred at various locations along Bemis Road themselves. Interesting thing they did note, and I didn't ask them this question, but they offered that they have done speed enforcement on Bemis Road in the past, and when they've done that, they've typically actually found the majority of the violators have been local residents.
That has happened in other neighborhoods also.
So then, to add on to that, just in terms of what the DPW's position is, I think I was clear about this last time, that we really have a mixed opinion regarding speed humps. They can, and I think we demonstrated through the trial, they can result in a small decrease in the 85th percentile speed, probably in the range of about 5 miles per hour. They do have, on the plus side, so they can reduce speeds. On the minus side, they're expensive to construct. They're about $6,000 each to construct, because you actually have to reconstruct the pavement in the vicinity of the speed hump to get the speed hump to be permanent and not just peel up off of the pavement. They can, in some cases, conflict with drainage, and they can also make snow plowing more difficult. So we want a strong advocate for or against, but they can have a positive benefit.
And it is a hill as opposed to flat.
Correct. Right. It's coming off East Hampton Road. It's a steady decline and then gets very steep as you go, obviously, past 91. One item we talked about at the last meeting was the location and quantity of the speed humps, and what I did was I provided an updated sketch, which I think is on the last page of your handout. And we talked at the last meeting of dropping the number of speed humps down to 3 speed humps. And you can see the locations of the black dots that are located there. with the
Oh, okay.
idea to start there if the council decided to move forward, and if necessary, in the future, you can always add more. And the other little tags that you see there are just where the speed limit signs actually appear, just in case it's confusing. Those little curved figures are,
Or the balloon-looking
the balloon
figures?
looking are actually where the posted speed limits currently are on Bemis Road.
And actually, if we may, can we suspend the necessary rules and take up item number 6 along with this? Because it's about
Well,
replacing.
they're already before us.
But they're already,
They're already before us.
yeah,
They're
they're
all
in the
taken up.
package, so we could,
Oh, that's right.
we can do that, yeah.
Yeah, because what I had proposed was bringing the speed limit down to 25 to see if that had an impact. And I know that you had mentioned last time you were here that there would be work done on the street in the next few years, and that would be a more appropriate time to install speed humps as opposed to putting them in, incurring the cost at this point in time, and then having to repave the road and reinstall the speed bumps. So I wonder if we could, work with the 25 mile per hour speed limit first to see if that has an impact on the speeding in the area, and then revisit the speed humps issue when we get closer to the paving or repaving down the line.
I think that would be prudent, and one point would be that it would likely then make the construction eligible for Chapter 90 funding, because it was being done in the context of the overall road paving project. But currently, we can't, Chapter 90 wouldn't cover the cost of just placing speed humps, but they would when it's context of an overall road paving project. One clarification on the speed limit posting versus statutory speed limit. I'm not certain if the councilors remember this. When the council adopted the 25 mile per hour state statutory limit, a statutory limit, in order for the police department to enforce it, they actually have to witness a vehicle driving at, or I mean, in excess of the statutory speed limit for at least 1/8 of a mile. They can't enforce them with spot radar guns. Whereas a posted speed limit, the moment you pass that sign, you are supposed to be driving the posted speed limit. So there's a difference between just say, the statutory limit applies versus the posted speed limit. The posted speed limit is actually a better type of speed limit from an enforcement standpoint.
So it seems like it is necessary in spite of all the notices that we have coming into the city at the various entrances for neighborhoods that, like this and some that the ward councilors have, we should move ahead with the posting of the signs as well.
And actually, the interesting thing is if the council in the past adopted a posted limit, that posted limit actually trumps the statutory limit. So the limit right now on Bemis Road is 30 miles per hour in the area that it's posted at 30, not 25.
Oh.
In order to bring that down.
Need to replace the
So it's
signs.
important then to pass this, to lower it.
Absolutely.
And that might achieve what they're looking for at way less cost.
I think we should at least explore that.
Okay.
So,
Just need a motion to suspend rules. It's fine. Hang on a sec. Can I entertain a
yeah,
motion?
motion to suspend the necessary rules, allow the public to speak.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You can come, give us your name and address, and if you'd like to comment, it's fine.
Good evening, I'm Roberta Dupree. I live at 162 Bemis Road, and I was against the speed bumps, or humps, whatever you want to call them. I'm just looking at the map that Ms. Lisi gave me, and I want to know the number of the homes on Bemis Road that these 3 circles are on. They have, to me, that's what the speed bumps would, recommendation?
Where the circles are, correct.
Yeah. What number of the homes are they?
I don't have them at the moment, and one note I did make in my write-up was that they'd be adjusted in the field, but I can provide that information, because we don't want to put them, for instance, in front of a driveway or other things like that. So
Well,
yeah.
I recall saying, and it's probably in the minutes, that we live at 162, and originally one of the humps was going to be right in front of our home. And we were dead set against that, and I'm going to reiterate that again, if we ever do get humps. I just feel that Bemis Road is just like a major highway, and there are no humps on major highways. It's a cut-through, it always will be a cut-through. People go slow, people go fast, they go different speeds. And I appreciate what Ms. Lisi says about 25 miles an hour. Maybe that will help. But my personal opinion is, and it's not fact, but opinion, is that we're not going to stop people from going faster or slower on Bemis Road. It's just the nature of the beast, and it's always been like that, and we've lived there for 40 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So what is the pleasure? Counselor Bartley.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make a motion to, in a second, to table. Oh,
Sure.
Hi, Larry Dupree, 162 Bemis Road. Interesting to me is that when they started the sign-up sheet for this way back when, the issue was not speed, but the number of cars every day. We're talking about 800 cars. And now it's become a speed issue. I find that quite interesting because that's not what the sign-up sheet was before. I agree with what Ms. Lisi says, that if in fact there is a plan to resurface Bemis Road, it doesn't make much sense to install these speed humps now, then have to take them out to resurface the road and then put them back in. So that would be my suggestion if you're going to do that. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the fact that even though this original thing was about cars, one of the problems is with school buses. When school buses come down the street, all the traffic stops. And with the speed bumps, from our driveway, I could see both temporary humps. And the buses coming down had to slow down. So we had 5 humps. And then in the morning, when all the traffic is coming through, you could have 2 stops because of the school bus and all the slowdowns. So I'm not really sure that the humps are needed at all. But I do appreciate the thought that there would be a delay in terms of the resurfacing of the road. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Bartley.
yeah, Mr. Bob, what's going on at East Hampton Road and Bemis? That sounds problematic. So what's the city's position? What's Mass DOT's position on this? Because that is I mean, you've got a really heavy volume on that street for a lot of times during the day. Sometimes very quiet, obviously, but I mean, rush hour, that is, and at high rates of speed. I myself have seen vehicles pass each other on that road, and clearly it's a violation of traffic laws, but that is, and you're pretty close to the intersection at Jarvis and with those new traffic lights in Woodmark Glen. I mean, what can be done, if anything?
At the moment, I don't have firsthand knowledge in terms of having looked at each one of the accident reports to understand what happened. I will say a couple of things. One, other than the area around the exit 17 interchange, all of Route 141 East Hampton Road is under city control, not Mass DOT control. So that is fully a city intersection, not a Mass DOT and city intersection there, even though it's a numbered highway. High volume traffic, and if you look at any location along East Hampton Road where there's traffic coming on and off of East Hampton Road, there's generally, whether it's at the log cabin, whether it's at East Hampton Road, you see a significant number of accidents. I can't, again, speak to exactly what's happening here other than you've got a lot of traffic on East Hampton Road, and that comes into conflict with people trying to get onto or off of East Hampton Road.
Okay, well, you just opened up another can of worms, because I didn't realize that though it is a numbered road, that's all under city control. And as many of us here are aware, there's a pretty significant issue being discussed relative to putting a rotary off of that road and reconfiguring all of that whole area for access to 91 south and northbound. So I really haven't heard much from the city at all. I heard a lot from Mr. Massey and others at Mass DOT relative to that, but I haven't heard a peep from the city of Holyoke on that issue. So I hope to hear something regarding that in the future. I mean, I think the residents in Lindor are gonna really wanna hear that entire stretch is the jurisdiction of the city of Holyoke. So I'm gonna put that to the side for now, but I just wanna underscore that since you brought it up. And then relative to the, I heard what Mr. Dupre said. I mean, I am just anti-speed humps myself, but, I don't live there, so, so whatever they want to do, we'll do it. But relative to this idea, I would be very warm to having a change in traffic laws. I think, as we all know, it's got nothing to do with signs, nothing to do with signs, has everything to do with enforcement. But that being said,
But this is a stronger enforcement tool, too.
hey, listen, I hear you, Rebecca. So it's well, more tools are better, but.
Well, yeah,
but-
it's a chicken-egg thing. You have to
Yeah.
have the sign to get the enforcement.
So I'll do whatever the chair wants, but I'd make a motion to table 4 and to recommend 6, if that's what you want. But unless the chair wants to,
No, that's
okay, if
a
the chair
fine
wants to.
motion by me if somebody wants to second it.
Okay, is that where we are? If then
We can do
dispose
whatever
of
we
these
want.
and- okay.
Sure.
So they don't
Is
have to,
there-
so they don't have to sit here for the whole.
Is there a second on that motion to table 4 and adopt 6?
Second,
Right?
Yep. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so then we can just keep going.
So we just passed the signage for 25 miles per hour. We'll see if that has an impact, and then we'll revisit the speed hump issue at some later time.
Hang on.
not sure.
I've been just given a technical alert. Sure. That it was so long ago. Thank you for the reminder. This was a continued public hearing.
Oh, okay.
So we did not have to suspend rules, but what we did need to do is make a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Oh, wow, you're really stretching it now.
You need to go there, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Really manipulating those rules, Mr. Dupre.
This is having to do with accidents. About a couple months ago, a motorcycle went into my car getting out of Bemis Road. You want to talk about speed. And if anything, and I never realized that the city has the domain, I guess, of what you just said, Bob, of that road, 141. That's where lights should be. There should be traffic lights there. And I know down the road, it's not that far away for other traffic lights from Jarvis across from Woodmar Glen. But that is a very, very dangerous area. And so when you think about it in the future, I know you tabled it, that's a consideration because it is so dangerous and you really can't get out of there unless somebody will stop for you when it's so busy about 4 times a day.
No doubt.
So
I
thank
make
you
a
very
motion that
much again.
Joe contact his friend, Mayor LaChapelle, and tell those East Hampton fools to slow down.
Thank you.
Oh, Joe's focused.
Okay, so now we can entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now I think we have to renew our motion
I'll make a
to
motion
table
to
4.
table number 4 and to recommend adoption of number 6.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we're properly completed on items 4 and 6. Thank you very much.
You okay with that, right? Yeah.
Am I okay with that? I am.
So, okay, so
For asking.
4, 6. So if we go in a regular order, we're on 7.
Correct.
And I guess I do need to read each one, but I don't know that I read 6.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Did I? Good enough. So item 7 was filed by me, ordered that no parking be established and signs installed on Lower Westfield Road from the Elks driveway to the reservoir gate. This issue is the same as it was on the other side. And I see your language, and Bob was good enough to communicate with me. Early warning, if it goes up on both sides, it applies to the residents as well as those visiting. I made them aware, they're aware. And so all we can do is see if it makes a better impact.
Could I just ask?
So, Council Murphy?
Yes, and then, is it possible to do it all the way up until the curve to, past the curve to Richard Eager Drive, and then allow, I mean, I know a lot of, including myself, that park when it's during the week and they're parking from Richard Eager Drive to the gate. And I know I've never had a neighbor, but I'm sure during the weekend when we have events, you definitely don't want people parking on there. But I'm just looking at if it's possible, and usually, being the senior citizen, it's usually the older people that I know that are parking there and walking there because there's no hills, as opposed to if you go to the Elks, you're walking up the hill. So I'm just, it would be probably 5 parking spots from Richard Eager to the gate. But it would still prohibit parking all the way up Lower Westfield Road until you pass Richard Eager Drive.
There's parking down near the gate itself that is not on the street.
As written, the order would
All the way to the gate.
prohibit parking all the way to the gate, so that's what I responded to. To Counselor Murphy's point, it could apply just to
The street.
to the intersection with Richard Eager Drive and not continue all the way down to the gate itself.
That would be acceptable, because I take your point. I believe the intention of the neighbors was the street, because their homes are being encroached upon.
Absolutely.
So the portion that is not part of the street, I don't think was part of the problem.
Okay.
So I was not reading that
Sure.
precisely. So if we just changed it to the end of the street before the reservoir gate.
Right. I can work with city solicitor to get the actual language that goes into the ordinance, but
Yes,
the
I don't.
intent is clear.
It was, for the people who can park down there that are not encroaching on the residents, no problem.
And I think that's all that's what I
Yes,
heard.
and so I think
I
that
don't-
would be fine.
I don't think you're hearing what the counselors are saying.
Okay,
They're saying down to the reservoir gate is fine.
right.
On the residential part of the road is where we want the no parking. So there's a strip along from the Elks into the gate, which doesn't encumber
We're on
upon.
the other end. We're on the other end.
This is
So
the,
if
Further
you
down.
if you went by the road into the Elks and you
Yep.
keep going straight,
Yep.
there's a gate down there.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and that's the one there. But that's the one that wouldn't be a problem if it was after the street.
Because you're past the neighborhood, yeah.
Yes.
And I think there
Yeah.
would be, I'm thinking there's about 6 or 7 spots that people could park
There
there.
are.
And usually
There
they're
are.
on
So
the
I
day I'm there,
apologize for that lack of clarity, because I meant the street, not
Right.
beyond the street.
someday.
Okay?
Me?
Counselor McGivern?
The gate, I think Rebecca was referring to, is actually Whitney Avenue. It has nothing to do with Whitney Avenue.
But it was on here. That's what's on here.
Whitney? It's not in front, it's not on the
We're-
agenda.
We're talking about Lower Westfield.
right, I didn't carry through the titles that appear in the ordinance. That Whitney Avenue reference is
At the
where
top.
it starts.
Where it starts to do the no parking
The
down
street,
Lower
the
Westfield.
Elks is Whitney Avenue to the Elks. So it starts,
That's
as written, it
correct.
would start at Whitney Ave, go all the way to the
Correct.
gate.
That is, yes.
My only question, and I have no problem with this, but do the neighbors understand when there's no parking, that includes their
Them.
guests?
Yes, because here was the
Because
discussion.
there's no parking up there when you have a few guests to your house.
Yes, so here was the discussion. Because initially, no parking across the street from their homes.
Right.
So they can get out of their driveways. Right?
Right,
Second part of the discussion, you put no parking there, and then they're gonna be parking on the people's lawns on the other side of the street.
right.
Final part of the discussion, put them up on both sides.
Ooh. People have guests.
But they're aware. They're aware.
Yeah, Madam Chair?
Counselor Bartley.
I'm, you know, I lived in Holyoke a little bit, and so I'm just saying, I don't go up there myself a whole lot, and if I do, I would just stay at the Elks.
Right.
But that's a big change, to have no parking on both sides. I'm not gonna make a motion, I'm just gonna humbly suggest that you pick across the street from the houses on Lower Westfield for no parking up until Richard Eager, as opposed to both sides. I hear what you're saying, but boy, that's gonna be or just have no parking on the home side. I would have it one or the other as a trial basis, but unless, I mean, that's just a thought.
Okay, so here's just what I'll share with you. I've spent time up there. At least half of the residents are calling me regularly about this issue. If the issue right now is the parking across from their home. If no parking is put there, the issue will then become parking on their front lawn. This is exactly what happened on Sunset. I've been to this rodeo.
So I'm wondering if no parking on the residential side might be a way to test it. And then if it gets to be unbearable for half the street, then,
So there's only houses on the one side.
Correct.
And what's
Yeah.
unbearable, their issue is them parking up and down the whole thing. And what happens is, it's not even always the parking so much, except that people literally at times cannot get out of their driveways because the cut is too sharp and the cars are too far into the road. But they don't want the parking to be prohibited there and then have the people parking on their front lawn instead. And I would put money on it. That's what will happen. They will go and turn around and park on their yard.
no, I hear you,
But
Madam
then their
Chair.
driveways would not be blocked.
I hear you, so, well, I mean,
But
listen,
I've been up there, I've been over it with the people. They understand if the signs go up, it applies to them as well as anybody else. And
all right, no. There you go.
I've been through it. I've been outward with them. They know what it is.
All right.
Could I just ask one,
Sure, sure.
just, and again, because I do walk there during the week several times, and I've never seen a parking problem down their area during the week, but I've been up there a few times on weekends when they're having, and I'm wondering if most of the complaints take place when there are events taking place at the reservoir,
No.
races or things like that? No?
No.
Okay.
No, because I think those people actually go to the Elks.
Yeah,
They park at the Elks.
but the Elks doesn't have enough capacity for all, I
Well,
know they don't trust, but they don't have enough, trust me.
The only one is that turkey trot race, that gets up pretty, Elks is overflowing at that point. And there may be some other races, Madam Chair, but, this is, yeah, I'm gonna support it, whatever you wanna do, but just throwing up.
But I will entertain the amendment, if it needs to be amended, to say to the end of the street before the gate.
Oh, is that what, you wanna go all the way to the gate?
No,
No.
to
Well,
into
I said to the gate,
intersection
but
of
I
Richard
didn't mean
Eager.
it literally.
right?
I meant as far as the street goes to the gate.
So it would be the intersection with Richard Eager Drive.
Yes.
What the table would say, the 1, 2, 3, 4th column would be southwesterly to Richard Eager Drive.
Okay,
It
so,
would start at Whitney and end at Richard Eager.
so I'll make that motion.
Second. And I appreciate you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And now on,
Motion to approve is amended.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. They may be sorry they wanted it, but they're informed.
Yeah, we're all informed now.
Well, it may be an easier amendment in the future to just say,
Copy that.
the east or west side from there.
We'll see.
Okay. Motion to take up item 8?
They're all up, right?
Oh, true. So item 8, order that no parking sign be installed near the driveway of 970 Hamden.
Didn't we do this? One of the ones?
My understanding was there was probably a previous order last year where There had been, I believe, a handicap ramp constructed near the Housing Authority property that partly addressed the issue, but what is happening right now is that between the ramp and the driveway, it's actually less than 20 feet, so people try to park there,
Oh, but
but they
there's,
end up hanging out in both ends of the ramp as well as the driveway.
Didn't you tell us not to put a no parking sign up there? I could have sworn you did.
That one I haven't spoken to myself. I don't know, Mike might have done in the past.
Okey-doke.
My understanding is it's, and that's, I'll be honest, that's typically my position, but this appears to be problematic where no amount of private signage and everything else has solved the problem, so.
All right, motion to approve.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Request that our city engineer evaluate the intersection at the city line at Rock Valley Road and Southampton Roads for the possibility of a four-way stop sign or recommend other safety improvement options. This was a call from residents.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm sure as the committee understands and the chairwoman understands, this intersection isn't the city line, but again, you are passing
Exactly,
forward
exactly.
something from a constituent.
Exactly.
Having looked at the intersection, I do agree it has some challenges, and I kind of listed the items that I see as what makes this intersection problematic. One of the big issues is you've got the intersection of Rock Valley is offset, so
Yeah.
the safest intersection is typically a perpendicular intersection where you've got both streets opposite each other. This has streets offset, and then it also has the streets at a skewed angle.
It's also what
Which-
makes it more dangerous.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes it more dangerous, more difficult to see, more difficult for people to know what they should do, shouldn't do. So that happens. The other thing is you're coming from the western Southampton Road. There is a curve, not a real steep curve, but still a curve that as you come around that curve really does limit the sight distance below what the recommended minimums would be at that location. On Rock Valley Road itself, if you look at the intersection, you look at the paved width, it's a real wide throat at that, and again, that can be problematic. I know why it's there, because at that skewed angle, you need that wide
To
turn
be able to pull.
to be able to pull around, but
Yeah.
it does create a big, wide paved location. And then lastly, there are some slope issues at the intersection, and there are some vegetation issues at the intersection. So trying to respond to the order, we first looked at whether or not it would qualify for a four-way stop. We haven't done a detailed analysis, but to be honest, I don't think a detailed analysis is that location is warranted. I did cite the various criteria that have to be
Yeah,
met,
and I
5
appreciate
accidents in a
that.
12-month period. I don't believe we're anywhere close to that. Volume on the major street as well as volume on the minor street. We may be there on Southampton Road, but I
would
don't think we're
guess.
anywhere close to being there on Rock Valley Road.
Probably.
I did note that there is an exception where you have, and we have it in a few places in the city, where we have four-way stops on intersecting residential streets. And that's when you have two streets that really have a similar feel, and it's really kind of unclear what the major street
Everybody
is and the
thinks
minor
they're the
street.
right of way.
And it's safest to have everybody to stop. In this case, it doesn't meet that. It's clearly, Southampton Road is a much more significant street than Rock Valley Road. So again, Southampton Road should have the right-of-way, should be able to continue through without stopping, and the side street should stop. Could we fix the problem by realigning or could we make it better by realigning the intersection? We could. But it would cost a lot of money, and it would
Bender's
probably
Hill
involve
first, please.
land takings as well. So as we worked our way through what can we do, we think, taking a look at cutting the slopes back a little bit further would help. Cutting the vegetation back further would help. And then painting stop lines, because there aren't currently stop lines on Rock Valley Road. And likely pushing the stop sign closer to the intersection. We can't push it all the way to the intersection again because the throat is so wide.
It would be
That
like in the middle of
the
it.
stop sign would be all the way on the, outside of the driver's vision. But if we move it a little bit closer, we would probably go with a larger sign, a 36-inch
I
sign
thought
instead
that
of a
would be
standard 30.
helpful.
And that would, one, allow us to move it closer to where people should be stopping, and then secondly, make it more visible. Because it would be taking it out of their line of vision just a little bit.
So if the committee does recommend this and the city council adopts this portion, this last recommendation, how long do you think it would take before we could get this done?
I would target the springtime, in terms of cutting the slopes back. Obviously, the vegetation should be maintained all the time. It's also not a great time to be painting lines, so.
What about the larger stop sign? Could that be done
We could do that
sooner?
fairly shortly, certainly, yeah.
All right. Well, I think doing something is better than nothing. And so I would hope that we could try that and see if it helps.
Make a motion that we adopt the recommendations of the city engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll count on the stop sign happening
Okay,
sooner than spring, okay?
understood.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is that the city engineer research and provide the council with recommendations for how to change the ordinance related to downtown parking so that businesses and residential needs can be best met.
So this one was interesting. I've spent some time researching, and I think Mike McManus was here at the last meeting. He talked a little bit about it. I've reached out to a number of adjoining communities and nearby communities to see how do they deal with this issue. In general, the city has adequate parking, but it's not necessarily where people want that parking to be. Everybody wants to park as close to their business, as close to their residence as possible, and when you get multiple things happening in the same area, you get conflicts sometimes. So although we have plenty of pavement, it's not always where people would most like that pavement to be. And I think this probably came up when there was some talk of perhaps adopting resident-only parking, maybe in some locations in the city. So part of what I did was I took a look at, well, really, what communities have resident or have addressed this type of problem through resident-only parking. Found that West Springfield has no resident-only parking. Chicopee has no resident-only parking. The nearby communities that do have resident-only parking, which include Westfield, Amherst, Northampton, and Springfield, have really adopted it on a very limited basis. And they've generally only done it when there was a specific major conflict they were trying to overcome. And in most cases, it was parking related to colleges. That's the case in Westfield. When they built the new field house, there became quite a lot of problems between the college, the field house, and a couple of different adjoining neighborhoods. So Westfield has adopted resident-only parking in the vicinity of a couple of neighborhoods of Westfield State College. The city of Northampton has one portion of one street that is resident-only, and that's immediately adjacent to Smith College. City of Springfield has only one location where they adopted resident-only parking, and that's Mattoon Street, where you've got this real dense residential area right in the center of a commercial district. And then Amherst has two streets that are adjoining Amherst College that are resident-only. So I didn't really have a good sense as I started to do the research. I kind of had a feeling that maybe more communities in the area had resident-only parking, but some communities do, but they really, again, use it on a very limited basis when there's a real specific problem that they're trying to overcome. Typically, there's a process that communities go through when they adopt resident-only parking, and I talk about it at the very end, but I'll mention it here. There is still some uncertainty as to whether or not resident-only parking can legally be adopted and subject to challenges. It was adopted in Worcester a number of years ago. It was legally challenged, and I believe the city of Worcester lost. Interesting thing is a number of communities have gone to the legislature, and that's what Springfield's current feeling is that if they adopt any resident-only parking area, they actually have to take it to the state legislature and have it endorsed by a special act. The city of Boston has a special act, the city of Somerville has a special act, the city of Cambridge has a special act, the city of Northampton.
For each resident parking zone, or just so that they can do that locally?
In those cases, no, not, but the interesting thing is the way that Somerville, Cambridge, Boston, I'm trying to think who else, they effectively give the community the authority to ban parking, but then exempt residents.
Oh,
So it's,
so
and it may be a strange variation on the legalities
how to
because
accomplish it.
city solicitor has reached out to a couple of different sources, and they've given their different answers in terms of whether or not you can actually restrict public use of a public way
Right, right.
or not.
Well, my recollection is when we had those resident-only issues where some wanted it, and then we got a lot of pushback, some didn't, was we did establish a petition process for it to even come up. And since we did that, it hasn't come up. Sort of like with the speed humps,
Right.
right? So,
So, just one quick question, and I know you haven't like wrapped up your report here, but thanks so much for doing this research in the first place. It seems like you've done an extensive amount of research, both regionally and then also across the state, so we do appreciate that. My one question is resident-only parking synonymous to parking by permit only? Because there were two conflicts that were coming up at the same time. One were the commercial and residential conflicts, but then also there was also a seemingly greater need all of a sudden for permit parking, and we started creating a lot of designated streets that had permit parking only, and I felt like to do it on this piecemeal sort of basis may not be the most productive route, and so I'm wondering if those sorts of questions are addressed in the resident-only parking, or if it's a different issue altogether.
Of the adjoining communities, again, excepting Boston and Cambridge and Somerville, and clearly some of those communities have major permit procedures. The only community that I found that has both what you're referring to, both permit parking and resident-only parking, is Amherst. Amherst actually has a location in the center of Amherst where they have permit-only parking and a significant permit-only parking fee where local businesses perhaps can purchase permits and secure space at a location downtown. But generally, Springfield, it's resident-only, Northampton, it's resident-only, Westfield is resident-only, but Amherst does have that variation. They do have both resident-only and permit in downtown. And I agree, it's two separate issues. In general, and when I talk about recommendations, overall my recommendation is that as much as you can, you want to try to share the use of parking. Because anytime you permit only one use, you're excluding another use. And many times you can get a long way towards addressing the concerns of both of the different types of uses by trying to figure out some way that maybe it's not perfect for both different uses, but it's more workable. So if it's a business that wants their customers to be able to park and turn over on a frequent basis during the daytime, as the city has a number of different locations where there's 30 minutes parking, that maybe only applies up until 6 o'clock or
Right.
8 o'clock or something like that. So come evening time, the residents then can use that
right,
with no
then
restrictions.
we say no, and in some places we say no overnight parking, for
Right.
different reasons.
Right.
But, yeah.
And generally, we're dealing with issues on a very, sort of small scale. If it's this street corner, it's this business, it's this apartment block that the conflict has. And they're typically best worked out by trying to develop something that's unique to that specific problem, but not going down what's a very slippery slope of creating resident-only or permit-only parking, because then you have to be able to develop a system by which you permit it, you defend it, you're consistent, you're not showing favoritism. And then at that point, you're taking a parking space, and that parking space may only be partially utilized because you've made a decision to only let this use use it or that use use it, versus allowing multiple uses to share that same space.
Thank you for that. And then I just see the recommendations that you make moving forward include revamping the parking advisory committee. I think you just mentioned using consistent criteria and perhaps developing consistent criteria so that we can make these decisions in various areas. But applying those decisions in a more discrete sense. So I guess at the end of the day, the piecemeal approach that we were using is the best approach, because it's really looking individually at the problems, the uses, the conflicts.
I would say that almost every one of them has a unique problem that you're trying to solve, and you don't have issues where you have an entire, 3-block area of the city that is completely overrun by this type of use happening during the daytime that then prevents residents from being able to use it, or things like that you have adjoining a college campus or something like that.
I would say then we could give this order a motion that it be complied with,
Okay.
unless anyone else has questions or concerns they want to raise.
Counselor Bartley?
I have just a question. And I just want to say thank you, first of all, because that was just
Complete.
yeah, just a lot of diligence that went into this, Bob, so thanks for doing that, and I think we need to, or I need to know more about the Parking Advisory Board. I mean, I was here 2012, I can't deny that, I need to know more about this, I need to know more about its purview, and then I'll have to look it up myself and just to see where we are. So tomorrow I get back to my office, I'll look it up and I'll see if necessary, I'll file some kind of an order just so I reinvigorate it. I really don't remember much, if anything, about it. I do know we've had discussions. I think other counselors have raised this as critical relative to,
It was to set the parking, like the meter rates, and also to figure out who's managing the garages.
Did it ever meet?
I don't know. I couldn't say. We never got anything back from them except for,
Counselor McGivern, did the Parking Advisory Group ever meet?
We had one invitation, one announced meeting, and that was it. And after that, I asked a couple of times, and there's never been another meeting that I know of.
This is why we don't remember.
there's
this
nothing.
seems like a good time to mention other boards that I only met, or never met once, but I won't go into any detail on that one. I won't, I've had too much fun with that.
We still have 5 more to go.
Right, I've had too much fun with that. I don't want to go there. But I will say this, and it's a little bit of negligence on my part. I won't speak for anybody else. I should have remembered this board, but I just have no recollection of it. I don't even know who's on it or who appoints it. There's anything relative to it. So thank you for the reminder, and I will look into it, and we'll proceed from there. Thank you.
And thank you on behalf of the committee for timely and thorough work as always.
And I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So this has been found to be complied with.
11 through 14 are all handicap parking placards, so perhaps we could take them up as a package and
Let me
approve the
dig through
recommendations
my
as,
pile here.
One of these items, items 12, if I may, in taking a look at the current ordinance table and taking a look what's on the street today versus what the ordinance table, it appears, and Councilor Murphy confirmed this, I think, in speaking to the resident, that there used to be a handicap sign at a location in front of 302, but it was removed, and things get removed. Maybe, I'm not certain why they get removed. Sometimes they get removed in the middle of the night, sometimes they get removed because somebody says that resident doesn't live there anymore or something like that.
That was the case here, I think, so.
Right. So I believe there's already a reference in the ordinance table that would be appropriate for this location so that the council committee wouldn't need to take action on this one.
verse 12.
We had another one like that recently, didn't we?
Right.
Center Street.
There's a lot of lines in the parking ordinance table, and I'm not certain. It would be
Need
a
to
project to go through every single
In
one of
and of
them and
itself.
figure out if they're still appropriate or not.
Can we get an intern for that? In all seriousness,
That
like
would be
someone
a
from
good
HCC?
project for
I have
college
done that
student.
actually on a number of other ordinance tables. One of our senior work assistant staff, I had them go, had
Yeah.
that gentleman going through several of the ordinance, the bus stop table and other types of tables, and trying to reconcile. So you will hear from me in some cleanup of some of those ordinance tables in the future.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, so 29 Belvedere Avenue, item 11 is recommended for approval. 302 is the one that you just mentioned, not needed. 256 Walnut Street
Recommended for
is
approval.
recommended for approval.
And I think that's it.
And I think that's all, wait. This is- I don't know what that is. Okay. Right, because there were 4, but we only really have, 3, but just 2 to act on. Okay, so then it would be in order to have a motion to approve the handicap space for 29 Belvedere and 256 Walnut.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank
What
you.
about 12?
And 12 is already in ordinance, so do we need to say to reinstate the sign?
I would say that we don't need that, it exists there in the ordinance, so no further action by this committee or the council is necessary. We'll get the sign back up
So
there.
motion give leave to withdraw.
All right,
Second, and I will contact the constituent who I,
but then,
Just say
Yesterday,
it's
so-
complied with instead of leave to withdraw, that it,
Well, I mean, why do you say that? Because we can't say that. It's
Because it's already in
place.
law.
There's already law in place.
so it's not, if
It's
we
not
were,
complied with.
if we were to approve, then that would be redundant. But to say
Right.
it's been complied with means it's already been complied with. It's already existing.
my question is, how do we make sure we get the sign back up?
Yep, they said they'll do it.
But I mean, do we have to say something to accomplish that?
We will get the sign back up.
Okay. So technically, I don't know that it matters too much, how we do it.
Whatever. I don't care.
I mean, it's in the ordinance, we wanted to put it in the ordinance, so it's done.
it might be, for this person, just based on the complied with, it
Because
might be a
then
little
they know it
nicer.
happened, even though they don't
But
understand
I will
the
communicate with them
technicalities.
Make sure
tomorrow. so-
everybody's feelings aren't hurt.
This
and-
person-
Oh, well, just so they understand what
Make
it
sure we
means.
soften it and everybody gets a pillow, so.
Everybody's happy, it's in the
Yeah.
ordinance.
Okey-dokes.
All right. One pillow a night is okay.
I do think that it's your order, you know that, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
So,
they're compliant with, I think, I'm
And-
okay with that.
okay, so that's a motion, there's a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Okay,
Never.
good. Okay.
15.
All right, so 15, order that the city engineer make a recommendation to the city council regarding the crosswalk from Elmwood Towers across South Street. There's parking on either side of the crosswalk, and pedestrians cannot see the flow of traffic from the sidewalk.
So reading the order, it sounds fairly clear that the issue is not, well, the issue is really a pedestrian being able to walk across the street and be able to see oncoming cars, at least based on the way that the order is written here. It's not marking of it, it's not anything more complicated than that. Based on that, I've confirmed, and both in the ordinance table and posted on the ground, or not on the ground, on the street, is no parking signs at the bus stop on the north side of South Street, right in front of Elmwood Towers itself. So everything from the bus stop to the intersection, there is supposed to be no parking, which would encompass the entire crosswalk, plus additional space beyond the crosswalk. So I think it's an enforcement issue at that point. If there are people parking on the north side of South Street, they shouldn't be there. And because no parking signs go some distance beyond the crosswalk. The interesting thing, and I researched it both in the city's ordinance table and state statutes, I couldn't find any requirement. You can't park on a crosswalk, but there's no requirement to park any minimum distance beyond the crosswalk, whether it's 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet. So legally, you could park right up to the crosswalk if you chose to, based on what I could find both in the city's ordinances as well as in state statutes. Unlike a street intersection or driveway where there's a setback from those. On the south side of South Street, as councilors may or may not be aware, there is actually posted 30-minute parking signs on both sides of the crosswalk in that location. So it is legal right now to park on both sides of the crosswalk, and I would assume that it was probably a business request at some point in the past to post that 30-minute parking in that location. So, one way to address the visibility issue would be to give up a parking space maybe on both sides of the crosswalk. That said, I'm not certain that the business owners would be particularly excited about that, but that, again, it's the balancing the competing interests there. That if you want to get the cars away from the crosswalk, the only way to do that is to post that no parking.
Counselor Barton?
There's really only one ongoing business in there right now, though. There's I think there's 4 different shops, but they're not, it's not a regular, none of them, only, except for the one, none of them are regular businesses. So, I appreciate this. I'm gonna say this is complied with. I will take the recommendation, and we will, file a separate order relative to no parking on either side of that crosswalk, because it is a potential hazard having these big trucks or vehicles from somebody trying to cross the street, and it's really the south side. Yeah, clearly that's it, the south side of South Street at that intersection. So that's the issue. I think that changing it to 15-minute parking is probably not a bad idea during that. I think also it would be really helpful if we could mark the parking spaces appropriately, because having been there, and that's where I generally, on elections and all that, I spent a lot of time in that area, believe me, a lot of time there, hours, upon hours on that little spot. And having observed it over the course of years and those many hours in there, it seems like there's a need for just making, delineating the parking spaces in that pocket. Further around that little corner on Harrison, it might be helpful as well, delineating a few parking spaces there, because that would help the that convenience store, which is, by the way, a wonderful store. If I give a little 2-second plug for it, it's fantastic. So with great coffee and sandwiches and all sorts of really good Puerto Rican food, I've got to say it's amazing. So it's like, I'm really lucky to have it. But that being said, now they're okay with it. And then if some other stores fill up, then maybe we can revisit it. But 15-minute parking during regular business hours, I don't think that's unreasonable. You're 8 to 5 business hours, Bob. So
Can we do that under this?
no, I don't think I can,
No? Okay.
Madam Chair. I'd love to,
Okay.
but I think that's.
It was just informational.
Yeah, it really, that's all I wanted. I just wanted to know if it's feasible. I learned something about, I think it's crazy. There's no ordinance or law about parking near crosswalks. I know you can't park on a crosswalk.
Right.
I think most people know, although I do see it.
Right, you see everything.
But yeah, that's that. So, thank you. Motion be complied with. Thank you.
Certainly, if the council felt, and I would tend to agree that it would be a good idea to have some minimum setback from a crosswalk. You could adopt an
Universally.
ordinance that requires that would then apply citywide.
Kind of like a hydrant,
Well,
right? I mean,
I'd have no problem if that's what councilors want to do, but I don't want to. Okay, so,
think a good distance for that?
I'd say at least 5 feet, probably no more than 10 feet. 10 feet
you
is a
wouldn't want to
pretty
make
good
it a
distance,
whole
right?
parking space,
so,
right?
you want to be on the order?
Sure.
Okay, I'll file it then. I'll say 5 to 10 feet, get a city engineer recommendation on that for citywide.
Because it might.
Joe, you want to be
5
on
in
that?
one place and 10
Sure.
in another.
And I can do
Right.
some research to see if there's other communities that have a number, and see if there's a kind of an industry-wide standard of what that number
All
should
right,
be.
so I'll add Terry,
think we've
Rebecca,
covered
Linda, Joe.
Well, so now that we're all warmed up again after our break from a few meetings, thank you very much.
We have one
This-
more
Oh, we
item,
do?
actually.
Oh, we do, and we have to vote on the motion that it was complied with that's before us right now. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there one more that we have, that
Partly
we
is number
skipped?
14, which has nothing to do with Mr. Parent.
Mr. Parent can
Oh,
go home.
okay. Thank you very much.
But this will be
Yeah.
quick, I assure you.
Hang on. Thank you for that reminder. I was on to his agenda instead of my own. Okay, so, is that a motion to take up 14?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Item 14, filed by Council Bartley, City Council amend the Wading Street Reservoir Study Committee ordinance to permit the at-large members of the committee to name up to 2 alternates.
Second.
So under discussion, Madam Chair.
Council Bartley.
Right, so I just want, I'm gonna make it, first of all, this is filed by Mike Sullivan and me. So I just wanna make sure Mike's name is on there. And thank you to the chair for, I did file this as a late file, because we had such a, I gotta say that, again, I'll compliment Councilor Leahy, because really he just did a bang-up job, in my opinion. I thought it was really unique, and the way he had everybody come in, and Joe was on that committee, and that was a really, that was probably one of the best interview city council meetings I've ever attended. Just to have everybody here, instead of having people,
One at a time.
it's horrible. It's just everybody here, because they can hear you anyhow. It was just much better, and I like that process better. So I'll compliment Councilor Leahy again and Joe on that one as well. I just want to make a friendly amendment, because when I wrote this on the floor that night, it's never a good thing, but I was in the, like I said, we had 5 really good candidates. We only had a certain number of positions, so it came to mind that we should have an opportunity for alternates, but I wrote at-large members. That'd be a negative. It'd be city councilors would be naming the alternates,
Okay.
not the at-large members. No, that's a no-go.
So to permit the city council.
City council to name committee, to name alternates to the committee. So that's my friendly amendment.
All right, is there a second to that? Second. All in favor?
Aye. And then just on the order itself, I'm hopeful that we can, I'll just file a separate order that we'll look for alternates, and I'll just file a separate order for that, and I'll send that to public.
So would they be non-voting? I mean, do you need any other description to
Well,
what their role would
that's
be as opposed to the others?
That's a darn good point. I think they would be voting should I mean, I'm open to discussion. I mean, I'm not married to it. I'm just saying, because I do see that in CPA, Madam Chair, and I really liked it, that the CPA, and I don't even think we approved it here, but I've seen, I think the lady at Wyckoff Avenue, that we just appointed her as CPA, but I saw her at CPA meetings as the alternate. Well, we never approved an alternate. They just kind of had their own alternate, but it's all good. But she was there, and now she from Wyckoff Avenue is a member of the CPA. I don't remember her name, but
So
Miss-
is an alternate a substitute?
Megan McGrath. Okay.
So is an alternate really a substitute for
Well,
an absent member?
Yeah,
Is that how you're
that's
considering it?
how I would envision it. But listen, if the body doesn't feel that that's a good way to go, then I would not say. I mean,
No,
these
I
are
was
such
just
good
curious,
candidates.
you
But
know.
I would say if an alternate is there, they can be, and the regular member is not, they can be a voting member. That would be my.
But they wouldn't be additional voting members?
Oh, no, because you can, we only have
Right,
a
I mean,
certain number.
that's just the-
No, they're not additional voting members, but they would be in lieu of an absentee.
So if we're filling a quorum here, like in our rules,
Plus,
similar to that?
plus, Madam Chair, it would be almost a nice feeder system. And I kind of like, and I think Mrs. McGrath, I should say, I think she used that, and the CPA committee used that as a feeder system for Mrs. McGrath. And I mean, listen, we got a really good candidate out of it, so why not do it here? So that's my take.
Okay,
I'm agreed.
so we have the motion as
It was
amended.
Yep.
Well, right, so name up to 2 alternates, and then I would amend it again, just to say, and alternates,
With voting power when they are filling in for an absent member.
shall have voting power when filling in for absent member.
Okay. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All in favor of the order as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Actually, I guess I should have had a motion
well-
and seconded
Well,
to do that. I'm
I'll,
starting to run the committee like Todd.
no, that's okay.
Make the motions,
I'll make
answer the
that
motions.
motion to approve as amended by adding the city council language and adding that alternate language.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we've done it right. Thank you very much.
Is that it?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, thank you very much, and it's not even 8:30 yet. There's a blessing.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.